You're listening to Happy, Healthy Hormones with Dr. Chris. Are you tired of the short-term patch to your health problems? Is avoiding medications and surgeries important to you? If you answered yes, then your prayers have been answered. Dr. Chris has been helping people transform their health for over a decade. He's a world-renowned health expert who specializes in holistic health. He's a professional speaker, chiropractor, and international best-selling author. It's his mission to help you reach your full God-given potential through holistic health and healing. Get ready to be inspired and transformed. Here's your host, Dr. Chris.
Hey everyone, I'm really excited to share this next guest that we have. This is Pastor Arron Chambers. My wife and I both co-interviewed on this. He just drops gold throughout, and the reason he's so special is because he just has a way of cutting through all the BS and really finding the underlying issues when it comes to relationships. And Arron Chambers is a lead minister of the Journey Christian Church in Greeley, Colorado. He's an author. He's a husband to his lovely wife, a father to 4 kids, an evangelism champion, a leadership consultant, marriage coach, and blogger. But he has some really cool things going on, and I really want you to just follow through because he has dropping gold throughout this podcast and has some really amazing insight. I think it'll really help you in your relationships. You know, if you're going through a tough time, just help you maybe get through those easier. Or if you feel you got a good marriage, I think it'll really just help get you that next level and continue to have that awesome relationship because, as you know, you got to work at those things. So enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and hear from Pastor Arron. So, all right, everyone, welcome. We have Pastor Arron with us today, so it's a pleasure to have him with us. Pastor Arron, how's it going today?
It's going great. It is an honor to be with you guys.
Absolutely. So we've got myself today, we've got Pastor Arron, and we have my lovely wife, Deidre, today. So we just wanted to bring you on for both of our viewers, for both of our podcasts, because we think that what you do is so valuable. And in relationships today, I feel there's a lot of things that are pulling relationships apart and a lot of distractions and a lot of just things that are just not healthy and a lot of habits that are being created just from our culture that we developed in the last, 20, 30 years in our culture here in America. And I think that you just do a good job of, not a good job, that's an understatement, but an amazing job of just being able to connect with people, cut past people's BS, and really be able to get to the root cause. And that's one of the things that we love about you is because Deidre and I are both very root cause people. We like to get to the underlying cause and help get long-term solutions to people, and we think you're an important part of that. So, yeah, thanks again. Deidre, why don't you take it away?
Well, I just want to add on top of that, Chris was saying that Arron is so good at just being insightful, and this is part of the reason why I love counseling with him, both individually and as a couple, is you can say something to him and he just reads right through it, and he knows, I don't know if it's the spirit or something, just he knows what's going on, and he can see through that facade or get to the root cause, like Chris said. So we want to share with our listeners today from you, Arron, what is your story? You know, how did you become a pastor, and specifically what led you to the niche of couples counseling?
Okay. Yes, I grew up in a pastor's family, and I didn't really want to be a pastor. I knew I wanted to go in some sort of ministry, and then God made it clear to me. I was working at a college as a recruiter, and God made it clear to me that I was supposed to go into ministry, and it was just a really definitive moment. And so I went into ministry at the age of 28 as far as the lead pastor goes. I've been in youth ministry before that. And then, but yeah, it was just a clear call from God. And I got into the niche of marriage coaching. As a pastor, you do marriage counseling as it is. But let me go back just a little bit, Deidre. My dad did a lot of marriage seminars when he was in ministry. He passed away back in 1988, but he did a lot of marriage seminars. And he actually had the idea for a marriage book that he was writing when he passed away. It never got written, and the notes are pretty much all gone. But there were principles that he taught that became foundational for me. And as I started doing marriage counseling, I found myself sharing some of the same principles. And then as life has gone on, I've added my own stuff. But my dad really just put in me a heart for marriages. Now, what I do now is a lot different than when I started. When I started, it was just kind of marriage counseling in my office at church. Now I do marriage coaching. I've worked with over 1,000 couples easily. I stopped counting at 1,000. I work with about 2 to 4 couples a week. I've already worked with 2 couples this morning. And and none of the couples I work with, I shouldn't say that, almost none of the couples I work with are in my town. they're all through Skype and FaceTime and distance, and people will fly in to see me, and people will fly me out to see them. And so I do marriage coaching now a lot. And I got into this niche, this particular niche, because of relationships with high-powered, successful doctors. And through this experience, it was this word of mouth. They'd say, hey, you need to talk to this couple, this couple. So now, like, most of the couples I worked with are like you guys, who are just like high-powered, successful, people who have a vision to change the world. And so that's my niche. It's really these. I have the most success. I've actually tried. This is, between me, you, and your listeners. I've actually tried what I do with you guys with ordinary people who are not wired the same way, and it crushes them, and they end up hating me. So I've realized that my niche is with people who are really successful, able to take it, thick-skinned, and committed to a mission larger than themselves. And a lot of you guys you take coaching very, very well. So I actually, almost exclusively call what I do now marriage coaching. And it's very practical, very in your face. I do not care how the color yellow makes you feel. I want to help you get to the next step. And like a coach, I'm a coach in real life too. I coach a high school track and cross country. And as a coach, like, I have split second. I have little tiny opportunities to make a big impact and to speak into your life. And so if you're running past me in the 400, I don't have a lot of time to work with. So I give you quick, meaningful instruction. So that's what I do with couples now, is as a marriage coach, I try to give you practical, life-changing, helpful guidance. And what's cool about you all is that, just like the other couples I work with, you can take it and you want to be better and you don't get your feelings hurt easily. And so, yeah, that's kind of the niche I'm in right now. And I'm excited to keep filling that niche because it's fun. It's so much fun when you guys know, because you guys are in the life change business. It's so much fun when you work with somebody, they want to change, and then you throw out 10 things and one of them was for them, and they take it and it works and they see results. It's like, that is so fulfilling.
I think that's so important, because I was just doing a Facebook Live earlier today on this, which is, people think that pain is not congruent with a healthy life, spiritually, physically, mentally. But in order for us to get better and to reach that next level in our lives, we have to go through some pain. And pain is a normal part of life. And without pain in our lives, we're really not living up to our fullest mission as well. So I think that's really important. Even in our relationship, you talk about tearing people down. It's okay if you feel offended, if you go through some emotional pain as you're counseling with someone like Pastor Arron, to feel maybe defeated, or just not that it makes you, because I never walk away from you feeling defeated. I feel inspired, maybe felt some pain in some things that I was feeling on myself, or maybe Deidre felt with herself, and pain that we need to improve in our lives and for ourselves, for our marriage. But that's like a good feeling, because then you come out on top and we come out better as a team, as a couple, as lovers, as everything else. So that's awesome. Yep. So,
well, pain is not good. Pain is not bad. It's So, like, I think about the first thing I thought about, Chris, when you said that, was James. And the Bible says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And when perseverance has finished its work, you're mature and complete, lacking in nothing. So it's a process that leads to maturity and completion. And then, like, in the world of chiropractic, when I go to get adjusted it sometimes hurts, but it's for my good. And that's the thing, is the couples with whom I have the most success are those who realize, I'm fighting for you. I am all in for you. I believe in you. And if there's any adjustments I'm trying to make, it's for your benefit. But I will not hold back in any way, shape, or form from the hard talk or hard word, knowing that, but you guys know it's coming from a place of love. And so that changes everything.
Well, what I love about working with you is it's never in your face, like screaming or like, you did this wrong, this is what you need to do. It's very, like you said, coming from a place of love, but you give objective and tangible advice, and you do it in a way that like speaks to the couples that you're working with in a loving and mature manner. And like, I've worked with you a lot, even individually, and I, like Chris said, I walk away feeling like, all right, maybe it hurts right now, but I'm inspired to change this and this to better my life, my marriage, and reach my goals. So
Pastor Arron, I want to talk to you too about a book you're working on. I was reading on your website earlier this week, and I know you have a couple books out that you've already written. And one of those books that said you were working on is one specifically for marriage, and just some wisdom bombs to help people just have a stronger foundation of their marriage. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like maybe what are you working on with that? What's some of your inspiration behind that? And like, what's the direction that's headed?
Yeah, so I actually met with a publisher this week that I work with, and presented like 4 different book ideas. And one of the ideas I presented was a book on marriage, and I have pretty much written it by all my time and hours working with couples. It's very practical, but I want people to have extraordinary marriages. And what I found is in working with people is that the difference between extraordinary and ordinary is often a simple thing. It's not. Some people think that is so big. I can't have an extraordinary marriage. Just we're so jacked up, whatever. And that's not true. It's sometimes just doing the little things right, week after week, day after day, week after week, and you find yourself in a really great place. I also feel like so many couples feel like they're so dysfunctional, and they're not. I like to say to couples early on when I'm meeting them for the first time is like, listen, you're acting like you're the most dysfunctional couple on the face of the planet, and that's only because you didn't have dinner with my wife and I last Thursday night. Like, we all have stuff, all right? And so the book I want to write, and I'm hoping to I'm going to write it one way or another. I'm either going to self-publish it or it's going to be published. It's a really practical guide for how to have an extraordinary marriage, and it looks at 5 different areas. Christ is the first. It looks at covenant, the idea of covenant. When you are in a covenantal relationship with somebody, it changes the whole paradigm. You realize, hey, we're stuck with each other. You might as well make it work. We made promises to each other, made vows to each other. You might as well make it work. So there's Christ, there's covenant. There's conflict. I talk about fighting and some really practical guides for fighting in a healthy way. One chapter is on communication, and I talk about the importance of communication in a marriage. And then last is on connection. And that's where I talk about intimacy and what it looks like to have a biblical connection. And I talk about, the 4 different kinds of sex that couples should be having twice a week.
Is monkey sex one of them?
Monkey sex is one of them. Yeah, in the context, it sounds really weird, doesn't it, Deidre? But it's a biblical concept, and I point out in the Bible where God actually teaches us to embrace that part of our sex life. But yeah, so it's a real practical book, and like I said, it's not written yet officially, but it's outlined, ready to go, and I'm just trying to figure out. I'd like to get someone to publish it because I'm busy and I don't have really time to publish it myself. And I'm hoping that it'll be in your hands soon, because people like you have been so encouraging, and I have a list of people who are like, please, give us a resource that we can have that's going to keep us from that's going to help us in a really practical way.
Yeah. Well, and I think this actually kind of segues into the topic that I wanted to touch upon, because when we first met you, it was at an in-person retreat, actually in Colorado, because Pastor Arron doesn't live near us. And one of the things that literally made my jaw drop, and correct me if I'm wrong if it's one of these things, but you said, bottom line, spouses, you need to be having sex with your partner twice a week minimum. He's like, that's the minimum goal. And so I'm just curious, is that one of the top 2 or 3 things that you see couples struggling with? And if not, what are those top 2 or 3 problems or things that cause marital issues?
Yeah. So that is an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me go back to just a split second. Why I think it's important to focus on the different kinds of sex, because yes, we do. I do counsel couples that a good goal to look at in a marriage relationship is connecting at least 2 times a week. And that's what I'm saying. You can't have monkey sex every night, but sometimes it's maintenance sex. Sometimes it's just a connection. But it's yes, twice a week, because here's the thing. It's in the Bible. One of the areas of sex I talk about is ministry sex. In the Bible, in 1 Corinthians 7, the Apostle Paul teaches don't stop having sex. You need to have sex with each other. If you're married, he says, my body belongs to my wife. My wife's body belongs to me. And it's for ministry, and it's for taking care of each other. And he says, do not deprive each other sexually, except for a short period of time, and for prayer. And he goes on to say, lest the enemy get a stronghold, get a foothold in your marriage. So absolutely, Deidre, I think that this is such a blind spot for couples, even Christian couples. It's this the importance of intimacy, the importance of connecting. Like I said, it's not always bells and whistles, but just that constant connection is so important to a marriage. And when I'm talking to a couple and they're not having sex on a regular basis, like they're having sex once a month, once every 4 years, then something is wrong. And now they may not see it as wrong. They may feel fine with it. but there's something flawed in a marriage relationship if you're not connecting intimately on a regular basis. And sometimes based on, external circumstances that can be, whether you have a baby who's nursing, or you're having health issues, or whatever, those can be extenuating circumstances. But even so, that should not keep a couple from connecting on a regular basis. Now, all things being equal, they're healthy. They're in they're scheduled. Twice a week is a great goal, and it just keeps the engine running. It's like a regular adjustment. It's like an oil change. It just keeps things working in a proper manner, and so absolutely, it's crucially important. And if you're in a relationship and you've lost that part of your relationship, it needs to be fought for. You need to find a way to rekindle it, because to let it go. Ironically, the way I say it, and this may be a little blunt, but the way I say it to couples, if you're not having sex, you're screwed. Like, your marriage is screwed. Like, you don't know it yet, but you're moving towards being excellent roommates, business partners, but not the relationship that you vowed to make and that God intended for you to have.
That's great. And that, I think, rolls into, what Deidre was getting into there, which was, what are some of maybe the top 2 or 3 areas of marriage, or maybe just life? No, not the action steps. I want to get to that in a second. But what are the top 2 or 3 things you see couples struggle with that causes marital problems? I mean, I think maybe sex might be one of them potentially, but you talked about some good action steps there. But yeah, what are 2 or 3 that you see the biggest things that affect marriages?
Chris, that's a great question. I'll give you 3. And these are 3 I hit all the time. They're almost like 3 legs on a stool. Boundaries, roles, and expectations. So much of what I'm working with now that's a part of almost every conversation I have with a first-time couple is, okay, let's talk about boundaries, let's talk about roles, let's talk about expectations. For example, you guys are both successful people, working careers and making a difference. That only works if you have really good boundaries. Boundaries around your work life, boundaries around your personal life, boundaries around your spiritual life, boundaries around your health life, boundaries around your sex life. Those boundaries are crucial, because when those boundaries are not identified and protected, life creeps in, and things overlap in unhealthy ways. And for example, you work all the time, you don't take time for yourselves, or you don't communicate anymore. You don't feel an intimate connection. And so those boundaries are important around your relationships. Maybe you have toxic relationships with people outside of your immediate family, and when you allow those to come into some of these other areas, it can become toxic. So boundaries are crucial. Roles simply can be who's doing what at any given time. They can change on the fly. There are times when my role at home is I'm the point person. There are times when my wife is the point person on my staff at work, and you guys are professionals. So when you're leading your staff, that works best when everybody knows their role. They know who they are in the system, what they're expected to do. And then expectations. Now, my wife and I, Chris, this is a huge thing. My wife and I are in a season when expectations is a huge deal right now. And we are having almost daily this conversation. Hey, babe, what are your expectations for today? And the thing about expectations, guys, is this. In a marriage relationship, there are at least 6 facets to expectations, okay? Chris, there are your expectations for what you're going to do today. There are your expectations for what Deidre is going to do today. And there are your expectations for what you and Deidre are going to do today as a couple. And then Deidre has her expectations for what she wants to do today, for what she expects you to do, and then what you guys are going to do as a couple. So, for example, I've been doing coaching all morning with couples, and then I have a funeral this afternoon at 3:00. So last night, I said, hey, babe, what are your expectations for me tomorrow? Now, if my wife had said, I expect you to be home to fix this, to have this conversation, to go to lunch with me, and we did not communicate, she's going to be ticked at me because I'm not going to meet her expectations. So what we did is she's like, so what are your expectations for me tomorrow? Because tomorrow morning I have counseling starting at 8 a.m. and I'm doing a really cool podcast, and then I'm doing more marriage coaching, and I got to go to a funeral. I will be home about 3:00. And so what we found is the importance of clearing up those expectations, because when those aren't clear, you set yourself up for very frustrating conversations, very frustrating interactions, because mankind, if you are expecting your spouse to be someplace and they're not there because you didn't communicate with them, that's frustrating. If you're expecting your spouse to do something or to act a certain way and it's not happening because you didn't communicate that is really frustrating. So my answer to your question is those 3 things are really important. Have those conversations on a daily basis. What are the boundaries we need to protect? What boundaries aren't working? What are the roles in this situation? Who's leading out in this situation? Because like in your relationship, one of the things I appreciate about your relationship is you both are dynamic leaders, but also sometimes in different circles. So when Deidre's out there changing the world and helping women to be empowered and feel beautiful and feel confident, well, then maybe she's taking the lead. But when she invites you into her world, that only works when you know your role, when you know the expectations she has for you, and vice versa. When you're working together in your world, it works really well when you have clear boundaries, roles, and expectation of what's going to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, even just the other night we had a workshop scheduled for the office, and I knew my role was just going to be being there as a supporter for him and not like co-teaching. But there are nights where we, co-teach a workshop together in our office, like having that set up in advance, which there's a lot of things there, obviously, that you find with couples. So what are some action steps that can help them establish a routine or, have those conversations about creating boundaries and expectations and just further clarification in their union?
Okay, so great question. Let me give you two tools, okay? One of the tools is a daily powwow, all right? And this is where you and your spouse say, a weekly powwow. This is where you and your spouse say, hey, what does your week look like? All right, what does your week look like? My wife and I will do this on Sunday nights. My wife's a teacher. She's a coach. I'm wearing a lot of hats. So we will sit down on Sunday night before we watch Walking Dead or some other, show we're binging. We will sit down and say, okay, what does your week look like? And as the spiritual leader, I start with my wife first. I say, hey, babe, what does your week look like? And she lays out her week. She pulls out her planner, and I put the big rocks in my calendar, make sure they're all there. I'll say, hey, when can we go on a date? When do you get time for yourself, babe? I want to go to the gym these days. We make time. Those are the big rocks. Time for each other, time for dating, time for God, that kind of stuff. And then I'll say, okay, babe, here's what my week looks like. I have a meeting this night. I have this at church. I have this event happening. And we get our week set. So we basically have a game plan. We have 4 kids and a grandchild, so there are a lot of moving parts. So sometimes you have to be flexible. But going into the week with pretty clear game plan for what's going to happen is really helpful, because that means, for example, I can go to the gym tomorrow morning and work out because my wife knows that I planned on a weekend going to the gym this many times a week and then on this morning. And it's also not viewed as selfishness because I've made sure I'm protecting my wife's time for herself. And so when you have those conversations at the beginning of the week, it gives you freedom to interact, to be independent, to work, to have time together without guilt and shame. Like, I can go to the gym and not feel guilty because I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm going knowing that my wife knows since Sunday that I was going to go work out today, for example. And then she can go to the gym and she can go to the library and read books, which she loves to do, because she knows, like, we've already agreed that I'm covering the family at that point, or I'm getting the kids from practice or whatever. So that's a big thing. And then the second thing, Deidre, is I call whiteboarding your life. And this is something I recommend every 6 months. And what this is, you don't really need a whiteboard. But what a couple would do would be they would go off by themselves and for a weekend. And they would take something like a whiteboard. And at some point in the evening, after going out to dinner or going to a movie, they would pull out the whiteboard and they would put on the whiteboard everything that represents what they're doing in their life at that moment. Just vomit stuff up on the board. Just fill it up. And then what you do is you talk about it. Just chat about it. It's like, wow, look at that. We do a lot of that. Or we don't do any of this. Or I don't like that at all. I've had couples do this and just be really, like, have a moment of clarity. And so then what you do is then you talk about it, you process it, you pray about it, and then at some point you erase it. And then you come back to it after erasing it, and you come back to it, and I like to say the next morning, you get up the next morning, you erase it, and you pray about it. Like, we want to own our life. We don't want our life to own us. And so what you do is you put things back on the board, and nothing goes back on the board without mutual consent and a little bit of discussion. And so some things will pop right back up there, and your work, your projects, different things like that. But what happens is, at the end of the process, if you've done it properly, you have a new vision for your life that feels empowering. And like I said, I've had couples do this a lot, and I've had stories like one of my favorite stories is the next morning when they were putting stuff back up on the whiteboard, the wife said, "I want to write a book." And they've been married for 17 years. He said, "You want to write a book?" She says, "Yes." "How long have you wanted to write a book?" "Well, pretty much ever since I was in high school." He's like, "Why am I just now hearing this?" "Because I didn't feel like it could work in our life. I didn't feel like it was a possibility." And she's written that book because it became a priority for them as a couple. I've had couples quit their jobs and move I've had couples decide to have children. I've had couples make major life changes because once they got control of their life and they looked at it right in front of them in black and white, they realized this is not what we want our life to look like. And once they own it and they realize it's empowering. So my wife and I did this about 3 months ago, and because of that, like I said, I'm in the process of working on about 4 different books right now with my wife's blessing, with her permission. Because of this, I know the priorities my wife has, and I can fight for those. All right, and I can make sure those happen. Some of them are not any of your business, but because I know now, because we whiteboarded our life, I know we're on the same page, we're moving in the same direction, and the things that need to happen within the boundaries, rules, and expectations are either happening or more likely to happen because we are owning our life.
Yeah, those are great. I mean, we implement those things. You've taught us those things. I don't think we tried the whiteboard thing yet. We do something similar, but we're definitely gonna implement that one. The calendar thing is like gold, no question, for sure. So, Pastor Arron, we appreciate you being on today. You've dropped so much gold for people. I mean, they could walk away from this, I think, and transforming their marriage, just applying these things you've talked about. We could probably talk for another 6 hours about stuff because you're just so enlightful in this area of our lives. But hey, I just want to have you touch really quick on just maybe a couple areas that people could go and find you and work with you, because obviously there's virtual ways you can work. You have retreats. People can fly you out. You can fly. I mean, there's a million ways, but what are a couple resources? And then we'll put them on the podcast too, and on the show notes.
Sounds great. I want to say something real quick to your audience. I've known Chris and Deidre for years, and they are the real deal. They are the real deal, and nothing but true passion, love, authenticity, and I actually watched Deidre's stuff on Facebook, and I'm totally not her audience, but I'm so inspired by her authenticity. And Chris, like, you guys are the real deal. You're making a difference. So if people want to get more information about me, they can go to my website, arronschambers.com, and that's 1A, 2 R's, ARRON, arronschambers.com, or they can reach me through email at Arron, once again, ARRONS, chambers at gmail.com.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, we'll put those links as well on the website and everything. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time. We know you're a busy guy helping lots of lives and changing lots of couples and future generations. So thank you.
Thank you, Pastor
Thank you.
Arron.
Thank you, guys. God bless.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please help more people in reaching their fullest potential, and rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. For show notes and other free resources we mentioned today, go to newedgewellness.com.